Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty heavy.
Yeah,
We're talking about the UK's decision to demolish Grenfell Tower,
right.
8 years after that horrific fire. And this isn't just about bricks and mortar or, just getting rid of a damaged building or whatever.
Absolutely not.
This is about, collective memory and trauma and how a society grapples with a tragedy that's
Well,
literally
yeah,
etched onto its skyline, right?
absolutely.
We've got excerpts from this recent news article laying out the government's plan and the reactions it's causing.
Yeah, there are a lot of strong opinions on this.
Oh, yeah. And just to set the stage for anyone who somehow missed this, the Grenfell Tower fire was this devastating event in London back in 2017.
Right.
It claimed the lives of 72 people.
Yeah, it was just awful.
It was a massive tragedy, and the images of the tower engulfed in flames, they just sear themselves into everyone's minds.
Absolutely.
And now, 8 years later, the tower still stands there.
A constant reminder for everyone.
Exactly. So this decision to demolish it has stirred up all sorts of feelings and questions.
Yeah, it definitely brings up the question of how we as a society, deal with this kind of collective trauma.
Exactly.
And how do we memorialize these events? Because everyone processes grief and trauma differently.
Right.
And the way we choose to remember these events can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was thinking, when the government announced this decision to demolish the tower, they said it was due to engineering concerns.
Right.
They're saying that the tower is structurally unsound,
Yeah.
which I guess, makes sense after a fire like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they also cited a lack of consensus on the tower's future, and that really jumped out at me.
Yeah, lack of consensus. That's really interesting wording, isn't it?
It is, because you dig a little deeper and you realize that lack of consensus means that there are some bereaved families and survivors who want that tower to remain standing.
Yeah, as a memorial.
As a memorial, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a physical embodiment of their grief and their demands for accountability for what happened.
Exactly.
But then, on the other hand, you have other survivors and residents who can't even stand to look at the tower.
Right.
Because it's just this constant agonizing reminder of the horror of that night.
It must be incredibly painful for them to have to see that every single day.
Absolutely. And so you have these two very valid perspectives that are completely at odds with each other.
And how do you reconcile that? Right. I mean, who gets to decide what happens to this space?
Right.
It raises all these questions about collective memory and public space.
It really does, because you can't separate the physical structure from the memory of the tragedy.
Right. It becomes a symbol.
Exactly.
And not just a symbol of the fire itself, but also of, the systemic issues that led to it, the questions of social inequality and, everything that Grenfell has come to represent.
It's like the tower itself becomes this tangible representation of all of those complex issues.
Exactly. And that's where the whole idea of collective memory comes in, you know?
Okay, so you keep saying collective memory, but I think we need to break that down a bit, because what exactly does that mean, and how does a building like Grenfell Tower play into that?
Sure. So think of collective memory as like a shared story. A group of people tells themselves about their past, right? It's how we as a society choose to remember certain events, and it's shaped by all sorts of things.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, think about monuments and memorials, the stories we pass down through generations, even textbooks and museums.
Okay, so it's not just like one thing.
No, it's a whole bunch of elements that work together to form this kind of shared understanding of the past.
And Grenfell Tower right now is part of that story.
Exactly. It's like this physical manifestation of a collective trauma.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So then the question becomes, does demolishing the tower erase that story? Or does it create space for a new one?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no easy answer.
Well, the government is saying that they're trying to create space for a new story. They're talking about this sensitive deconstruction and incorporating salvaged materials into a future memorial.
Yeah, I've heard that term sensitive deconstruction, but honestly, it feels kind of vague to me.
Yeah, what does that even look like in practice?
Right. I mean, I've read that they're going to be consulting with engineers and the community
Okay.
to figure out the safest and least disruptive way to take the tower down.
So it's not just going to be like, boom, blow it up.
Apparently not. They're even thinking about things like noise reduction and dust control.
Wow, that's pretty considerate.
Yeah, it sounds like they're treating it almost like an archaeological site.
Which in a way it is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a site of immense historical and emotional significance.
Exactly.
So it's not just another demolition project.
No, not at all. And that brings us back to that question we were talking about before.
About whether demolition is erasure or closure.
Yes. Is it an act of erasure or a step towards closure? And I don't think there's a single right answer. For some people, maybe taking the tower down will feel like a physical manifestation of moving on,
Yeah,
a weight has been lifted.
right.
But for others, it could be interpreted as an attempt to sweep the tragedy under the rug, to silence those who are still fighting for justice and accountability.
That's such a complex issue because you've got this very personal experience of grief and loss
Yeah,
playing out against this backdrop of public space and collective memory.
absolutely. It's like individual versus collective.
Exactly. And the government's stuck in the middle trying to navigate this
Yeah.
incredibly complex web of emotions.
And make a decision that's probably going to upset someone no matter what they choose.
It's a tough spot to be in.
For sure.
And it makes you wonder, is there a way to honor the victims and the community's pain without the physical structure?
That's the big question, right? Can a new memorial built from salvaged materials truly capture the essence of what Grenfell Tower represents?
Or will it always feel like something's missing?
Right, because you can build a new structure, a beautiful memorial, but you can't recreate the weight of history, the tangible connection to the past.
It's like trying to bottle up the feeling you get when you stand in a place where something significant happened,
Hmm.
the energy, the heaviness.
Yeah.
You can't just replicate that.
You can't manufacture authenticity.
Exactly. And so we come to you, our listener. What do you think?
Yeah, imagine yourself as part of the Grenfell community. Where do you stand on this demolition?
What would it take for a new memorial to truly resonate with you?
And how do we as a society ensure that the stories and the lessons of Grenfell are never forgotten, even as the physical landscape changes?
Those are some tough questions, but they're important ones to consider.
They really are.
And we want to hear your thoughts. So feel free to reach out to us on social media or leave a comment on our website,
We want to keep this conversation going.
because this is an issue that deserves our attention and our thoughtful consideration.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Grenfell Tower demolition.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.